My parents bought my brother a $92,000 Mercedes SUV for his 16th birthday. For me, they gave a used bicycle with a flat tire. Learn to struggle, my dad said. My grandma heard everything and said nothing. But on my 18th birthday, a flatbed truck stopped in our driveway. The driver asked, "Are you Natalie?" Then pointed to the back of the truck. Dad dropped his keys. $92,000. That is what my parents paid for my brother's 16th birthday present. A pearl white Mercedes Glell's SUV with tan leather seats, a panoramic sunroof, and a red bow the size of a kitchen table sitting on the hood. The dealership delivered it on a flatbed trailer at 10 in the morning while our entire street watched. My mother stood in the driveway and cried. My father shook the driver's hand like he had just closed a deal on a second home. My brother Landon stood there in his pajamas and screamed so loud that Mrs. Hadford across the street came out onto her porch with her coffee to watch the whole scene. The sidewalk was cold through my sneakers. There was a backpack full of textbooks over my left shoulder because the grocery store expected me for a 4-hour shift in 40 minutes, and nobody in my family had thought to mention that today was also a day that mattered. Not for me. For Landon. Everything was always for Landon. 2 years earlier, on my 16th birthday, my father handed me a used bicycle. A women's 10-speed from Goodwill with a flat rear tire, rust crawling up the chain, peeling grip tape, and a price sticker still on the frame. $34. He leaned it against the garage door and delivered 4 words like he was passing down wisdom. Learn to struggle. Natalie. My grandmother was standing at the kitchen window when he said it. Through the glass, her hands were still on a dish towel. She did not come outside. She did not argue with my father. She did not say a single word to anyone in that house for the rest of the evening. At dinner, she passed the potatoes and she ate her food, and she looked at my father exactly once, a look that lasted 2 seconds and held something in it that I was too young to name. That look was not agreement. It was a decision. If you are new here, welcome to Family Secret Tales. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what happened next, because what my grandmother did in silence was louder than anything my father ever said out loud. The bicycle stayed, not because it was a gift worth keeping, but because getting rid of it would mean accepting the terms it came with: the flat tire, the rust, the $34 price tag, and the 4-word philosophy behind it. The idea that struggle was something my father chose for me while building a different life for my brother 6 feet away in the same house. The bicycle stood in every garage of every apartment and every home where I have lived since that day, leaning against the wall, tire still flat, sticker still on the frame. Jude, my husband, asked me once why I kept it. Not in a judging way. In the quiet way he asks things when he already knows the answer is heavier than the question. Because he was right, I told him. The struggle was real. He just does not get to decide what I did with it. My father's name is Victor. He is 58. He has worked the same mid-level insurance adjuster position for 22 years. My mother, Judith, is 56, a dental office receptionist. Together, their combined income covers a mortgage, groceries, 2 cars, and a comfortable suburban life. It does not cover a $92,000 SUV for a teenager who has never held a job. That math never worked. But at 16, and then at 18, I did not ask where the money came from, because asking questions in that house was the same as handing them a weapon. My father made the decisions. My mother supported them. Landon received them. And I carried whatever was left. But my grandmother Estelle was keeping count, not on a spreadsheet, not in a filing cabinet, on the backs of envelopes, in the margins of bank statements, in a memory that missed nothing and forgave less. On the morning of my 18th birthday, a sound woke me that did not belong in our neighborhood at 7 in the morning. Not a car engine. Something heavier. Something diesel. idling at the curb with the steady thump of a truck that had driven a long way to be there. Through my bedroom window, a flatbed trailer parked in front of the house, hazard lights blinking orange against the early light, a man in a gray work jacket standing at the tailgate with a clipboard and a pen. On the back of the flatbed was a Ford Ranger pickup. Dark green, 5 years old, a scratch along the rear bumper, work tires, a silver toolbox bolted to the bed. Not new, not shiny, not a Mercedes. But it was solid, and it was paid for, and it was sitting in my driveway at 7 a.m. on a day nobody in my house had mentioned. The concrete was cold under my bare feet. The driver looked up from his clipboard. "Are you Natalie?" The nod came before the words did. He pointed to the truck. "This one is yours, paid in full. Registration and paperwork are in the glove box." The screen door banged behind me. My father came down the steps holding his coffee mug in one hand and his car keys in the other. He looked at the flatbed. He looked at the driver. He looked at the Ford Ranger with the scratch on the bumper and the work tires and the toolbox. Then he looked at the kitchen window, the same window where my grandmother had stood 2 years earlier, watching him hand me the bicycle. Estelle walked out onto the porch. She was 70 years old in a blue cardigan she wore every morning, and she moved the way she always moved, slowly, deliberately, like she had already decided what she was going to say before her feet touched the driveway. She looked at my father. One sentence, "She is 18. That is hers. Do not touch it." My father's keys slipped from his right hand and hit the concrete. The sound was small, but it carried. He did not bend down to pick them up. He stood there with his coffee going cold and his mouth half open, and for the first time in my life, someone in that family had made a decision he did not control, did not authorize, and could not undo. Inside the glove box behind the registration was an envelope. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper from a credit union I had never heard of, a trust account statement. The balance was $86,000. Estelle had opened the account the year I was born. She deposited into it every month for 18 years, birthday money, Christmas money, the small pension she earned from 31 years working in a school cafeteria. Every spare dollar she could find for 18 years went into that account, and she never told a single person in our family until the morning the flatbed rolled into the driveway. The truck cost $8,400. The rest was for my education, my first apartment, and whatever kind of life I decided to build with it. Sitting in the cab of that truck, the seat smelled like cleaning solution and cold vinyl. The steering wheel was stiff. The trust statement shook in my hands because my hands were shaking. $86,000 saved by a woman who ate canned soup 3 nights a week, who wore the same 3 coats in rotation, who clipped coupons and reused aluminum foil, and never once bought herself anything that was not marked down. She did all of that so that on the morning I turned 18, a flatbed truck could idle in the driveway and deliver one message to my father: "You underestimated the wrong person." That trust paid for my degree. It paid for my CPA exam prep courses. It covered the first 6 months of rent on the apartment, where I sat up until 2 a.m. studying forensic accounting, because the bicycle had taught me one thing my father never intended: everything can be counted, and the people who count carefully are the ones who find what was hidden. My name is Natalie. I am 34. I am a forensic auditor. The firm is small, just me and 2 staff, but the work is precise and the work is mine, and every client who walks through my door brings a box of numbers that tell a story someone tried to bury. That is what I do. I dig up buried numbers. My father has never asked what my job involves. He calls it counting other people's money. He told Landon once that it was not a real career. He does not know what forensic means. He does not know what I can trace, what I can reconstruct, or how fast I can turn a stack of bank statements into a timeline that no one can argue with. He should have asked. 16 years passed between the flatbed and the phone call. The bicycle came with me to community college, then to my first apartment, then to the house Jude and I bought 3 years ago. It never moved from its spot against the garage wall. But the truck moved. The truck carried me to classes, to internships, to the CPA exam center, and eventually to the small office where I hung a sign that said Callaway Forensic Advisory and waited for the phone to ring. The phone rang. It has not stopped. In those same 16 years, Landon failed 3 businesses. A mobile detailing company that burned through $47,000 in 8 months. A drop-shipping website that collapsed in 4 months and cost $28,000. An event planning company that never booked a single event and swallowed $18,000 before Landon quietly closed the LLC. Through all 3, my father described Landon as still finding himself. My mother described him as different from you, honey. He just needs more support. Landon drove the Mercedes to every failed office, every failed meeting, every failed pitch. The car aged. Landon did not. There was a dinner 3 years ago that should have told me everything. My grandmother's 80th birthday. My father stood up at the table and gave a toast about how the family took care of its own. He looked directly at Estelle when he said it, like he was reminding her of something she owed him. At the end of dinner, he handed her a card. Inside the card, instead of a check or a gift, was a printed statement showing the $1,200 monthly transfer from her account, labeled Family Management Services. He had printed it and placed it in a birthday card as though it was a gift receipt, as though she should be grateful for the service. My grandmother looked at the card. She folded it. She put it in her purse. She said nothing. That was the smaller betrayal. The one that proved this was not carelessness. It was a system. Then my grandmother called. A Tuesday evening in January, 2 years ago, Estelle was 80. Her voice was steady, but underneath the steadiness was something I recognized from 100 client consultations, the sound of a person who has been carrying a number they cannot explain and cannot ignore any longer. I need you to look at something, she said, not over the phone. Come to Irene's house. Irene is Estelle's niece. The family calls her Aunt Irene. She is 58, a retired paralegal who lives in a ranch house with a clean kitchen table and a filing cabinet in every room. Irene is the kind of person who has utility bills from 2003 stored in labeled folders, who reads loan documents for entertainment, and who told my grandmother 2 years before that phone call, "Start keeping your bank statements." All of them. Do not tell Victor. Driving to Irene's house, the streets were dark, and the heater in my car rattled the way it always does in January. My hands were tight on the wheel. Not because I was afraid of what I would find, because I already knew the shape of it. Forensic auditors develop a sense for money that has been moved wrong. It sits in the back of your skull like a sound you cannot quite place. And it had been sitting there every time I watched my father spend money that did not match his salary. Estelle was at Irene's kitchen table with a shoebox, not a filing box, a shoebox. Inside, bank statements, withdrawal slips, handwritten notes on the backs of envelopes. 2 years of documentation collected by an 80-year-old woman who did not own a computer, but who understood. With a clarity that comes from working 31 years in a cafeteria and counting every dollar that entered and left her life, that something was being taken. The first statement showed a monthly withdrawal of $1,200 from Estelle's savings account at First Heritage Bank, a recurring transfer to an account ending in 7741. "That is your father's checking account," Irene said from the doorway, arms crossed. I matched the number through old family deposit slips Estelle kept from years ago. "How long has this been going on?" Estelle answered before Irene could. Her voice was quiet, but it did not waver. "Since he became my power of attorney. He told me it was a management fee. He told me every family does it. He told me I should be grateful someone was watching my accounts so I did not make mistakes. Did you make mistakes, Grandma?" "I made one. I trusted my son." Irene walked to the table, pulled out a chair, sat across from me, and put her hand flat on the shoebox. Your grandmother has been eating canned soup 3 nights a week for 2 years, not because she cannot afford better. Because your father takes $1,200 a month before she can spend it on anything else. She clipped coupons for groceries while he bought your brother a $92,000 car. You are not being cruel by looking at this. You are being accurate. That is your entire job. That was the moment the auditor took over and the daughter stepped back. The full audit took 5 nights at Irene's kitchen table. After my regular clients were done for the day, I drove to that ranch house and I spread statements across the oak surface. And I built a 14-year timeline that told the story of a family's finances in a language no one could misinterpret. I almost deleted the spreadsheet at the $47,000 line, not to protect my father, because the total was building toward a number that would make it impossible to treat as a mistake, and once I wrote it down, there was no unwriting it. But then I thought about my grandmother's hands, the swollen knuckles, the thin skin. 31 years of lifting cafeteria trays and wiping tables, and the wages those hands earned were sitting in my father's checking account, paying for businesses that failed and a car that depreciated and a lifestyle my brother never earned. The cursor stayed on the spreadsheet. The numbers kept going. If you are following along and want to hear how the confrontation played out, make sure you are subscribed to Family Secret Tales. This is where the story turns. Here is what 14 years of withdrawals looked like. The $1,200 monthly management fee Victor charged Estelle since becoming her power of attorney in 2010. Over 14 years, $201,600. Landon's first business, $47,000. Second, $28,000. Third, $18,000. All pulled from Estelle's savings, all described to her as investments that will pay off. The engagement ring on Brooke's hand, $14,500, purchased from Estelle's savings account, and the number that stopped me mid-keystroke, the $92,000 Mercedes Gels, not paid from Victor's salary, paid by withdrawing $92,000 from Estelle's retirement certificate of deposit, cashed early, with a $9,200 penalty that Estelle also paid. Victor told her the money was for home repairs. There were no home repairs that year. There was a car with a red bow in the driveway. Total, $312,000. My grandmother started with over $350,000 in lifetime savings, pension payouts, and a small inheritance from her late husband. She had $41,000 remaining. 82 years old. Canned soup, clipped coupons, reused foil. Because her son drained her accounts to fund the child he preferred while telling the other one to learn to struggle. Then something worse surfaced. Tucked between 2 bank statements from 2009, Estelle had kept a letter she wrote to Victor but never sent. Lined notebook paper, small, careful handwriting, Victor. I set up the trust because I watched you give her a bicycle with a flat tire and call it a lesson. It was not a lesson. It was a choice. I am making a different one. She never mailed it. But Victor found it. Estelle told me, quietly, without meeting my eyes. He came to her apartment in late 2008, held the letter in front of her face and said, "You think you know better than me how to raise my children?" He became her power of attorney 16 months later. The withdrawals began within the year, and they escalated after every deposit. The trust was Estelle's rebellion. The theft was Victor's punishment. The new power of attorney, naming me, was filed with the county clerk on a Thursday. The app's elder financial abuse report was filed the same day. My attorney Prentice prepared a civil suit for $312,000 in restitution, with a lease pendens on Victor's house and a title lien on the Mercedes. Every mechanism was in place before the dinner. Every document filed before the first plate was set. I almost left the dinner without opening the laptop. Sitting in my car in Victor's driveway, Jude in the passenger seat, the audit file between us, the engine still running. "You do not have to do this tonight," Jude said. "Prentice has the filings. The legal process works whether or not you say a word at that table." He called me into this meeting to ask for money. For Landon. Again, from me. I know. He is going to sit at the head of that table and explain why his son deserves more. From the daughter he gave a flat tire. From the mother he has been robbing for 14 years. Jude was quiet for a moment. Then, "The bicycle is in the garage." That was all he said. The bicycle. The flat tire. The $34 sticker. The rust on the chain. That bicycle was the reason I could count, and counting was the reason we were here. The engine turned off. The car door opened. Victor had called the dinner to discuss helping Landon with a fourth business. A fitness app. His meeting. His table. His china, which Judith only brought out when she was managing a narrative. Everyone was there. Landon sat next to Brooke, who wore the $14,500 ring and did not know where it came from. Jude sat next to me. He had read the full audit. He squeezed my hand once under the table and let go. Victor stood at the head of the table and spent 6 minutes presenting Landon's new idea, how the family needed to come together, how everyone should pitch in. Judith nodded at everything. Landon smiled at Brooke. Victor looked at me. "How much can you put in? I need to ask you something first." That was when Victor decided to finish me off. He put both palms flat on the table and leaned forward and delivered the line that was louder than every number I had ever counted. "Natalie, I am going to be straight with you because nobody else will. You rode a bicycle to community college. You married a guidance counselor. You do not have children. You do not have a house worth more than what I paid for your brother's car. You sit in a rented office counting other people's money. You have never built anything. You have never risked anything. So when I tell you your brother needs this family's support, you do not get to sit there with your little audit reports and act like you have earned a vote at this table. You have not." Judith stared at her plate. Landon studied the wall. Brooke's hand went still on her water glass. Jude's jaw tightened, but his body did not move because he knew what was in the laptop and his job was to let me open it. The laptop opened. "Irene, go ahead." My phone was on the table. Speaker on. Irene's voice came through the line, steady and clear as a court filing. She read 3 entries from Estelle's bank statements. Dates, amounts, account numbers. $1,200 November 2011. $1,200 December 2011. $1,200 January 2012. The rhythm of a theft that ran for 14 years without a single month missed. Victor's jaw went tight. "What is this?" The laptop turned toward him. Every withdrawal, every category, every dollar traced from Estelle's account to its final destination. The spreadsheet did not need me to raise my voice. Numbers do not negotiate. $47,000 for the detailing business. $28,000 for the dropshipping company, $18,000 for the event planning LLC that never booked an event. Each number landed like a separate weight on the table. Victor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. $14,500 for the ring on Brooke's hand. Brooke looked down at her finger. She did not remove the ring, but she stopped turning it. Her other hand moved to her lap and stayed there, and $92,000 from Grandma's retirement CD for the Mercedes sitting in Landon's driveway, plus a $9,200 early withdrawal penalty. "You told her it was for home repairs." "There were no home repairs, Dad. There was a car with a bow on the hood." Victor's face changed in stages. The color left his cheeks first, starting from the jawline, rising. His right hand gripped the table edge until the knuckle went white. His left hand moved to his lap, and then back to the table, and then to his lap again like it could not find a place to be. He swallowed 3 times. His breathing went shallow. His eyes moved from the screen to me, to the phone to Judith, looking for someone who would stop this. Nobody stopped it. $312,000. 14 years. From an 82-year-old woman who eats canned soup 3 times a week because her son told her the money was being managed. Landon shoved his chair back. The legs scraped across the hardwood. He was standing, hands at his sides, looking at Victor the way you look at someone you suddenly do not recognize. "You told me she offered," Landon said. His voice cracked on the last word. "You sat in my apartment and told me Grandma set that money aside because she believed in me. You said she was proud of the businesses. You said the ring was her idea." "Landon, sit down," Victor said. "Was any of it true? Any of it?" Victor did not answer. He looked at Judith the way he always looked at her when he needed someone to manage the room. "Mom knew," I said. "She co-signed Landon's apartment lease using Grandma's address as guarantor. She drove Grandma to the bank to sign the POA documents and told her it was for emergencies." Judith's chin dropped half an inch. "Your grandmother wanted to help this family," she whispered. "She said she wanted to be useful." The laptop turned toward Judith. On the screen, a photograph of a bank statement. On the back, in Estelle's careful handwriting, "I did not authorize this. I do not know where the money is going." "I am afraid to ask." Judith's mouth closed. Her eyes went to the tablecloth. She did not speak again for the rest of the evening. Standing up from the table felt like standing up from 18 years of sitting at the end of it. This was the part Irene and I had rehearsed. The part Prentice had reviewed. The part I had said out loud alone in my car at 2 a.m. until the words stopped shaking. "You charged your own mother $1,200 a month for 14 years and called it management. You cashed her retirement CD to buy a 16-year-old a car and lied to her about where the money went. You funded 3 businesses that all failed: an engagement ring, an apartment, insurance, credit cards, and a lifestyle that your son never earned. And every single dollar came from a woman who clipped coupons and reused aluminum foil and wore the same 3 coats for a decade. That is elder financial abuse. That is the legal name for what you did. My attorney Prentice filed an APS report yesterday. A new power of attorney naming me was filed Thursday. Your access to Grandma's $41,000 remaining dollars is terminated as of this morning. A civil suit for $312,000 in restitution was filed today. A lus pendens is now on this house. And the Mercedes has a title lien because the money that paid for it was never yours." Victor's hands were trembling, not the dramatic kind. The small kind that lives in the fingertips and does not stop, the kind that tells you the body has understood something the mouth has not admitted yet. This is the last conversation about money in this family that includes me. The last dollar. The last favor. The last time anyone at this table asks me for anything and expects me to sit quietly. That is over. Tonight, Victor started to speak. "You gave me a bicycle with a flat tire and told me to learn to struggle. You spent $312,000 of Grandma's dollars. The bicycle taught me to count. I counted every cent. The furnace clicked in the hallway. Landon's fork slid off the edge of his plate and hit the tablecloth, and nobody moved to pick it up. Brooke was looking at the ring on her hand. She turned it once. Then she slid it off her finger and set it on the table next to her water glass. The diamond caught the overhead light and threw a small, sharp line across the tablecloth. "You told me you saved for it," Brooke said to Landon. Her voice was level, but her eyes were wet. "You told me you put money away for a year. You showed me the savings app on your phone." Landon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Nobody else spoke about the ring. Landon saw it sitting on the tablecloth. His face went still in a way that was different from Victor's collapse. Victor's face was fear. Landon's face was the beginning of understanding that the ring, the car, the apartment, and every business he had ever started were paid for by a woman who could not afford her own groceries. Victor tried. He straightened up. He smoothed his voice into something that was meant to sound reasonable. I will set up a repayment plan. Every cent back to your grandmother. I just need you to call off the apps report. Tell them it was a bookkeeping error. We handle this inside the family, the way we have always handled things. The laptop closed. It went into the bag. The chair pushed back. My feet carried me to the kitchen doorway where Estelle's homemade had brought her 20 minutes earlier. My grandmother was standing in the hallway with her purse in both hands, the same blue cardigan, the same slow posture. Her coat was on the hook beside her. The coat came off the hook, the sleeves opened. Estelle put her arms through, and I buttoned the top button because her fingers do not manage buttons well anymore. At the doorway, Estelle stopped. She turned and looked at Victor. Not with anger, not with sadness. With the same 2-second look she had given him through the kitchen window 18 years ago when he handed me the bicycle. The look I had been too young to name. You had 14 years to give it back, Victor, she said. You bought a car. The door closed behind us. Jude was already at the truck. The engine started. Estelle sat in the passenger seat with her hands in her lap, watching the road the way she watches everything, quietly, completely, missing nothing. I almost called my father the next morning, not to forgive, not to fight, because calling was what 34 years of training had built into my hands. At 6:15 and my fingers were on the phone and my eyes were on the kitchen counter where Estelle's unsent letter sat in its envelope. The line about the bicycle, the word choice. My hand came off the phone and did not go back. The consequences arrived the way consequences do when the paperwork is already filed. Quietly, officially, on schedule. Landon brought the Mercedes to a dealership 10 days later. He wanted to trade it in for something smaller, something without a history attached to the hood. The finance manager ran the title. The screen flagged. He looked up at Landon with the expression of someone who has delivered this kind of news before. There is a legal claim filed against this vehicle's title. We cannot process any sale, trade, or transfer until it is resolved. What kind of claim? A lien. Filed by an attorney named Prentice. You would need to contact them directly. That is my sister's attorney. The finance manager closed the folder. Then I would suggest contacting your sister. Landon called Victor from the dealership parking lot. Victor did not answer. Landon called again. Voicemail. He sat in the driver's seat of a pearl white Mercedes with a scratched bumper and a title that belonged to a legal claim, and the engine was running, but there was nowhere to go. He sat there for 20 minutes. A salesman walked past the window twice and did not knock. 3 weeks after the dinner, Estelle turned 83. Arlene organized a birthday lunch at a restaurant in town. 14 family members came. Victor and Judith were there because they did not know what was about to happen. They sat at the far end of the table, and Victor made small talk with his brother about the Lions and the weather and the price of gasoline. Like nothing in the world had shifted. Arlene stood. She is 79, Estelle's older sister, a retired bank officer who spent 40 years reading numbers the way I read them now. She thanked everyone for coming. She said Estelle was the strongest woman she knew. And then she read 3 sentences from the app's investigation summary. Just 3. She did not add commentary. She did not raise her voice. She read them and she sat down and she picked up her water glass. Victor's brother put his napkin on the table and said, "Victor, outside now." Victor did not move. His brother leaned closer and said, "Quieter. You stole from our mother. Get up and walk outside with me before I say something I will not take back." 2 cousins at the far end stood and left without a word, without goodbye, without looking at anyone. Victor's sister-in-law reached across the table and put her hand on Estelle's wrist. Estelle put her other hand on top of it. At the head of the table, Judith was staring at the centerpiece, a small vase of carnations, like she was trying to memorize every petal so she would not have to look at anyone's face. Nobody yelled. Nobody caused a scene. The silence carried the weight of 14 years of receipts, and every person at that table could feel exactly how heavy it was. 5 days later, Victor drove to Estelle's old apartment. The building manager told him she had moved out 3 weeks prior. He asked where she had gone. The manager said she was not able to share that information. He stood in the lobby for a moment, keys in hand, then walked back to the parking lot and got into his car. He parked in Estelle's old space. The space had a new number sticker. His mother had lived in that building for 9 years, and the number belonged to someone else now. He called my phone. Voicemail, full. He called Landon, who told him she is living with Natalie. They changed the number. I do not have the address. He called Irene. No answer. He called Judith, who was in their bedroom with the door closed. She picked up on the 4th ring and said 6 words. I told you this would happen. Then the line went dead. Victor sat in his car in the empty parking spot for a long time. The engine was off. The windows were up. His phone was in his hand, but the screen was dark. He had called 4 people in 10 minutes and reached none of them. The parking spot was painted with a number that was no longer his mother's, and the building had already assigned it to someone who parked a blue Subaru there now. The Subaru was not in the spot today, but Victor's car was, and it did not belong there. And there was nothing to do with that except sit with it and understand, maybe for the first time, what it felt like to reach for something that had already been given to someone else. If you have stayed with this story to the end, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and leave a comment. These stories take time to build, and your support keeps them going. February now. A Saturday morning. The light in my kitchen is thin and white because winter in Michigan does not try to impress anyone. Estelle is sitting at the table eating oatmeal with brown sugar, using the same long silver spoon with the bent handle that she has used for 40 years and refuses to replace. Jude is at the counter making coffee. The machine gurgles and clicks, and Estelle looks up at it every time like it has said something interesting. Through the kitchen window, the garage wall is visible. The bicycle is leaning against it, the same spot it has occupied in every home I have lived in since I was 16. But something is different. The tire is inflated. Jude pumped it up last weekend without saying anything. He sanded the rust off the chain and oiled it and set the bicycle upright for the first time in 18 years. He did not make a speech about it. He just did it. The $34 sticker is still on the frame. That part stays. Above the spice rack, in a simple black frame, is the original trust statement from the glove box of the Ford Ranger. $86,000. The number that became a degree, then a license, then a firm, then the audit that uncovered everything. Across town, the loose pendants notice is taped to Victor's refrigerator. The hallway is quiet. Estelle's room at the end of the hall has a stripped bed and an open closet with nothing inside. Judith keeps their bedroom door closed most of the day. Victor drinks his coffee in the kitchen and looks at the chair where his mother sat every Sunday for 9 years. The chair is pushed in. Nobody pulls it out. There is nothing of Estelle left in that house. Not a photo, not a sweater, not a bent spoon. She took everything that was hers, and everything that was hers fit into 2 suitcases and 1 shoebox full of bank statements. Estelle lives with us now. Her room is at the end of the hall, the same position as the room she had in Victor's house. But this one has a window that faces the backyard, and a quilt she picked herself, and a nightstand with a glass of water and her reading glasses, and a photograph of her late husband that she brought in one of the 2 suitcases. She eats dinner at our table. She watches Jeopardy at 7. She does not eat canned soup anymore. Last week she asked me if I still had the bicycle. "It is in the garage," I said. She nodded. She did not say anything else. But the next morning when I walked to my car, the bicycle had been moved. Not far, just shifted a few inches. The handlebars had been straightened, and leaning against the front tire, held in place by a small rock, was a recipe card in Estelle's handwriting. My favorite meal from when I was a kid. Baked ziti with a breadcrumb top. At the bottom of the card, in smaller letters, for Natalie's kitchen. No expiration. My grandmother gave me a truck and a trust and 18 years of saving that nobody knew about. My father gave me a bicycle with a flat tire and 4 words he meant as a dismissal. He was right about one thing. The struggle was real. And the first thing it taught me was how to count.